All right, hopefully I went live on the correct channel. I think I did. Okay. Save. Open up. It is. Save. A new day. Whole bunch of fucking insanity to cover. I'm swearing early in this one. Swearing early. So if you don't like that, then you probably already clicked off, but that is okay. A lot of stuff going on this week, last week, the future. Never ends. The flow of information, the flow of whatever you want to call it, consistently happening. A lot of Trump talk. It's quite obviously the season. 2 days ago was the inauguration. Trump is now the president. And a lot of people are melting down. A lot of people are losing their minds. Now, some of the things he's doing, I am all for. Some of the things we'll get to that. There's a mega thread that I'm going to be covering here. An entire thread of each and every what was it? Executive order he signed. So we'll be doing that near the end. But right now we have Pierre Poilievre talking with CTV reporter about Trump, the tariffs, basically everything that's going on. Right? Everybody knows. This is big news. This is the talk of right now. So let's get into it, shall we?
By Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Thanks for joining us here live on CP24. I got to ask you, where were you when the inauguration was happening? Where'd you watch it? Who'd you watch it with? Some of your thoughts.
I've been traveling throughout Quebec, meeting with small business leaders and workers, and just basically sharing a Canada First plan. Let's put our country first for a change. We've had for the last 9 years a weak government that has put our country in this position of vulnerability. They've doubled our debt. They've hiked the taxes. They've blocked key resource projects that have made us, as a result, more dependent on and at the mercy of the United States government. What we need is a bring-it-home economic tax cut that's going to leave more money in the pockets of entrepreneurs, investors, workers, home builders, so that we can have a stronger economy and stand on our own 2 feet for a change.
And doing that, obviously, you want Canada first. You want to help entrepreneurs, and we've talked to a lot who want to enter into the U.S., but they're kind of skeptical right now with these potential tariffs. So if elected as prime minister down the line, whenever that election is, what would your strategy be to work with President Trump?
Well, first and foremost, we would unfortunately and reluctantly have to retaliate against tariffs applied to our businesses. And then we would go to the grassroots American economic interests that are on our side. The union leaders and business owners in the Midwest that use Canadian energy. We would go to the U.S. states that buy our electricity, the major exporters of the $50 billion of manufacturing equipment and machinery that Canadian companies buy from Americans. We go to those vendors and say, listen, we need a free trade deal that allows us to exchange our goods and services without tariffs because it's in your interest. And that kind of pressure from the ground up will, I think, help convince President Trump to make a deal that will be both good for Canada and the United States. He is, after all, a deal maker.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it seems like, Premier Doug Ford seems to be taking the forefront here. He's talks about his project AmCam. The premier's met with, outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They were all there in Ottawa, minus the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, was in Mar-a-Lago. She is seemingly not wanting to sign this deal with the rest of the premiers. She wants to protect the oil in Alberta. How do you make sure everyone's copacetic? Everyone you talked about, Canada first.
She seems to be also the only one that actually went over to Mar-a-Lago to speak with Trump. All the other premiers just seem to be hiding right now.
How do you work with the premiers right now to make sure they're all on the same page?
Well, you need a strong prime minister for that. Can you name one governor that's been leading the charge on the American side of this?
No.
No, because the states, the separate states, are not all speaking different messages. They have one strong nationally elected leader with a new mandate. And on this side, we have a weak, effectively former prime minister who's thoroughly discredited and widely unpopular. He has no credibility with anyone. And then you have a squabbling group of other liberals fighting for political power. That's left a vacuum. So effectively, we have 10 foreign ministers in the form of premiers who are all running around saying different things. What we need is a axe the tax election now, so we can elect a strong government that will take back control. Yes, take back control of overspending and taxes, inflation, immigration, all of that, but also take back control of our diplomatic stance and go to Washington with strength to put Canada first. And that is what I will do as soon as we get the election done.
You know, you talk about the tax.
And when is that election coming? That's the question that everybody's asking, because it just keeps getting pushed further and further back with Trudeau proroguing government or parliament and everything shutting down. We're just sitting here waiting. He says he resigned, but he obviously didn't. He's still working as the prime minister. He still leads, as you can see, time and time again. He does all these press conferences with premiers, all of this stuff. So what is going on here? This delayment of the inevitable. We need to get things moving here. We need to have this election. Literally, it should have already happened. We can blame the NDP and Jagmeet for that, but this should have already happened.
Actually, you know, the carbon tax election, it seems like people who are throwing their names in a leadership race, whether it's Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland, who CTV News has learned that, you know, she's not going to have the carbon tax reportedly a part of her platform.
You sure about that?
Well, we'll see. We'll have to see. She came in here and we chatted with her. But do you feel like you might have to adjust, pivot a little bit the message? Maybe not a axe the tax, maybe switch it to something else, or you're not buying. You're shaking your head. You're not buying that.
You're telling me. So let's start with Freeland.
Yeah,
she's been Justin Trudeau's finance minister, administering the carbon tax. She raised the carbon tax by 167%. She bragged that she raised the carbon tax during an inflation crisis. And then you have carbon tax Carney. This guy says the carbon tax is too low. And yesterday, he just won the endorsement of the crazy carbon tax minister, Stephen Guilbeault, who has said he would resign from the Liberal Party if they ever got rid of the carbon tax, which means that Carney has made a deal with him that they will pretend that the carbon tax has been put aside until after the election. And then if they win, not only will they bring it back, they will raise it higher than ever before. These are lying liberals. They cannot be trusted when they come to you after raising the tax for 9 years and having passed a law to quadruple it up to 61 cents a liter. You know, a few days before the election, come to you and say, oh, whoops, we made a mistake. We're going to suspend that. You know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to bring it back. They're going to raise it higher than ever. Don't trust the lying liberals. There's only one party that has always said.
Guys, it simply comes down to when the Economic Forum update and booklet was to be announced and was supposed to be, the deficit was supposed to be announced, they ran away and they hid. They tried to deny all of that from being put to the public on that specific day. The Liberals ran and they hid. Karina Gould ran up to her podium, said, here's the thing, after trying to deny it. Literally, nobody showed up to give the statement because Freeland resigned. And then they all sat there and tried to run away from the fact that we are over $60 billion in debt. My God, they're all scrambling right now to find the next leader of their party, and they're all on completely different pages. They're not even pushing the same stuff. You have a guy, a Liberal MP, saying that Quebecers won't care about the French language being removed and that he can't speak French. Are you serious? That's one of the Liberal MPs that's running. You have Chrystia Freeland, who was beside Trudeau for literally 10 years. And you're gonna sit here and say that she's a good choice? She's equally to blame, just as much as Justin is. And on top of everything, you have carbon tax Carney. There's a reason that is the slogan. There's a reason he has that nickname. He pulls the strings. He is the puppet master of Trudeau. It's just a simple fact of the matter. You look at carbon tax Carney, and you just get this gross feeling when you see him speak. He just is an evil person. And sitting there, trying to run as the next liberal leader, saying that everything's fine. This is the guy that's literally pushing the carbon tax. He wants it to be over $200. Right now, we're sitting at roughly $150, well on our way to over $170. Supposed to be by 2030. That's what the liberals want, 2030. Gas will be so expensive you couldn't even imagine driving a car.
Said, and we'll always do one thing, axe the tax.
All right, let's go back to D.C. right now. Obviously, on his first day on the job, President Trump signed an executive order, the U.S. government only recognizing two genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Oh, one more time.
U.S. government only recognizing two genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man. I am as people who say cis man. There are people there who they say they're
me too.
Gender
I'm a
neutral.
Man. Well,
you are a man. Yes, there are people out there who say they're gender neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here, whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only two?
That's because there is only two.
I'm only aware of two, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then
I mean, there's just no argument around that. There's only two. It's just science and biology.
You're welcome to do that, but I'm aware of two, and as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone to make their own personal decisions. That's the kind of government I'm going to run.
And with that, the current government, they currently have passports that allow people to put on, gender neutral on their passport. Advocate groups want the government, mind you, the outgoing government, to ask the U.S., would the U.S. recognize these passports, obviously on their way out, if you are the next prime minister? Is that something that you would advocate for?
I have to be honest.
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you. I just saw your segment on homeless encampments that are popping up all over Toronto. We've got 25% of our population in poverty. Housing costs have doubled. Crime is rampaging through our streets. I just find it to be a strange priority to spend time talking about this. My priority is to give people back control of their lives, bring back Canada's promise that anyone who works hard gets a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. That's the promise we need for Canadians. If Liberals want to talk about different labels for gender that they want to put on passports in the United States, they can do that. I'm going to talk about the things that will bring home Canada's promise.
Let's go. Holy shit, man. People are out here starving. They can't afford a brand new house. Christ, they can't even afford gas to go to work so they can afford these things, right? And the Liberals are sitting here debating there's like 7 million genders or something like that. It's time to come back to reality. It's time to sit down and join everybody else. I think it's time we the insanity's got to stop, right? It can only go so far. This is the worst we've ever been in. Literally over 2 million people at food banks. You could go on their website, the Canada Bank of Food Banks of Canada, or wherever province you're from. You could see the total. right? Last year we had what? How many thousands upon thousands? It was like nearly 20,000+ people lining up for rejected produce because they're starving. They can't afford food, so they're gonna line up for food that realistically wouldn't make it on the shelves in the first place because it's, I don't know, doesn't meet whatever quality standards that the grocery stores want. We're gonna sit here debating how many genders there are. I think it's time we stop. It's just time to come back down to reality. It really is. There's no more time to be playing these fucking games. I am just being real. We're over $60 billion in debt, and you want to talk about safe spaces and how many genders you want to be a different gender for every day of the year. I'm sorry. It's just we got to think of the legitimate issues here.
Okay. And okay, you know what? Let's talk about housing because I'm not upper middle class. I don't even know what I am right now, but making ends meet for a lot of people is very hard. So we understand some of your plan for housing, giving incentives for municipalities to building such. Canada's massive. A lot of our population is by the border. Is there anything we can? This is something I've thought about. Just driving around Canada, specifically in BC, going north. Yeah. There's a lot of land out there. Is there something that if elected as Prime Minister, could be implemented that we can start building more homes, like elsewhere, yes, places where there's really not much infrastructure built right now?
Yes, this is a very good question. First of all, I just want to get out of the way one thing. I want to axe the sales tax on new homes to save you up to 50 grand. I also want to incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development charges to build. The provinces should be pressured to take their sales tax off. Those combined changes would save hundreds of thousands of dollars on each home. But you're right. We have the second biggest landmass in the world. We have the fifth most sparsely populated land.
We do, but it's like fucking glaciers and just tundra. Like, do you really want to go live in Nunavut or Yukon or like any of those territories up there? I don't think so, right? That's why everybody goes to places like BC, Ontario, Alberta, etc., etc. Like, it's nobody wants to go freeze their fucking assholes off with a bunch of polar bears. I'm sorry, it's just nobody does.
Mass on planet Earth, and yet we have the fewest homes per capita in the G7. We need to free up that land. Now, the federal government is the largest landowner, so I've said I'm going to sell off 15% of all federal buildings and thousands of acres of non-ecologically sensitive federal land to build. And I will be challenging provinces and municipalities to look at their land inventory and say, what could we put here? Is there room for a home? We have major parts of our land that are close to the 49th parallel, so very close to the United States, and a lot of economic opportunity that are almost uninhabited. We need to free up that land to build more homes as well. So that's how we're going to do it. Get out of the way, cut the taxes, let the builders build.
All right, fellow Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, I wish.
All right, that's going to do that. My God, that middle section, right? What was it right here?
Other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as Prime Minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than...
Like, holy shit, man. The reporters sitting there going, shit, what did I just get myself into? Continuing on, though. The largest seizure of cocaine ever seized by Toronto's drug squad. 875 kilos worth. $83 million, the Mexican cartel were the distributors. 6 people arrested. The drugs came into Canada from the U.S. It was smuggled into the U.S. from Mexico. Nice police work. Here's my stance on the tariffs and everything. Trump wants to blame Canada for bad borders. And you know what? I'm sure we might have our issues every now and again here, but Mexico is literally 1,000 times worse in every way, fucking shape, and form. And Joe Biden as president didn't do you guys any goddamn favors for 4 fucking years straight. So to sit here and blame Canada for your own government's lack and carelessness and responsibility for your own fucking borders, I think that's a little bullshit to be putting that on us. Now, once again, I'm not saying we're perfect by any goddamn means, but $83 million directly linked to the Mexican cartel coming into our fucking borders here in Canada? Who's to blame for that? Joe Biden. So stop pointing fingers at us and look back at yourselves. Look back at the administration you just booted out that destroyed your fucking country for 4 goddamn years. Joe Biden and the retarded Democrats. Alright? Those are the people you should be going after. Slap fucking tariffs on them, not us. That's pure bullshit. And the fact that not one of our premiers or prime minister or leader has turned around and said that is a little bit concerning. They want to sit here playing politics. They want to sit here playing with people's lives. The very people you should be blaming are the ones that you just booted out of your administration. Rant over. Let's continue. Elon Musk. Holy shit, guys. If you have been on the internet in the past 48 hours, you would have obviously seen this video. Oh my god, it's only playing through one ear. We're gonna have to deal with the one-ear audio.
Ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization. Okay. This. You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, you know, important. Some are not. But this one, this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
Oh my god.
My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured. Thanks to you. We're going to have safe cities, finally, safe cities.
So obviously, like, not the greatest gesture to do, right? If you've seen the video, you know. But like, you could take literally anything out of context in that scenario there. No, Elon Musk isn't a Yahtzee. It's time everybody just relaxes. I think we need to just breathe for a second here. Ugh. My god. This is the legacy media, though. The mainstream media at its finest. They've been doing this for decades. Misleading, lying, manipulating, playing into an agenda. They simply just want the clicks and the attention at the end of the day. That's all it really comes down to. Why do you think they're so interested in Shutdown 2.0, if you catch what I'm saying? Why do you think whenever some new thing comes out that a bunch of people start spreading? I'm trying to use this in loose terms here, so you're going to have to bear with me. Essentially, they want a 2.0 of what happened a few years ago. And whenever something like that starts to happen, they fucking jump on it like a bunch of disgusting cockroaches just in the darkness waiting. That's what they are. That's what the legacy media is. They're just a bunch of vile rats. Each and every single one of them. Doesn't matter who you watch. I don't care. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, some Canadian ones, CP24, CHCH, I don't care. You give any of these associations your time, you're buying into it one way or another. But if you watch it to make fun of it, that's a completely different thing. That's what more people need to start doing. They need to start watching the legacy media to make fun of them, to fact check them. And that's why we have stuff like this right here, right? We have the video. The video of Elon Musk doing a not so great gesture in the heat of the moment for his speech there, but like I said, you could chalk that up to literally anybody. Moving on. Jag meat, everybody's favorite. Everybody loves jag meat, right? Elon Musk knows Pierre Poilievre is his guy in Canada. The hell does that even mean? He knows he'll do whatever he wants. Not going to upset that endorsement. So he's saying that he's bought and paid for by Elon Musk. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh slams Elon Musk for supporting Pierre Poilievre.
Elon Musk is a part of an administration that threatened our country, that threatened Canadian jobs, that threatened our sovereignty, threatened to use economic pressure against our country. So you would think that someone that loves Canada, that wants to defend Canadian workers when given a chance, would reject that endorsement, right? Well, Pierre Poilievre was asked the question, do you accept the endorsement of Elon Musk? And this is very telling. This tells you whose side he's on. He said in response to that, you would think, you'd say, no, I reject the endorsement of a guy who's a part of an administration that threatens our country, that threatens Canadian workers. I would reject that. He said he's a great guy. He wants to go to Mars. My kiddo wants to go to Mars. Yeah, even with the Nazi sign, he's accepted the endorsement. So this is what it means.
See, like, just talk about out of touch. Talk about being an idiot. You want to sit here talking about endorsements? Jagmeet, you backed, hands down, Canada's worst prime minister in the history of our country. And you continued to back him. Non-confidence vote after non-confidence vote. You sat there and you waited for your pension. You are literally the definition of a bootlicker. That's Jagmeet Singh for you. That's Jagmeet Singh. Immigration Minister Mark Miller reacts to Trump's executive orders. Let's listen to what Skeletor has to say.
So when, how, if, here to help us plod through those answers from the cabinet retreat in Montebello, Quebec, is Immigration Minister Mark Miller, also a member of the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations. Hi, Minister. Good to see you again. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Vashi. Nice to see you.
I wanted to start off and just find out, for Canadians who I would understand, as I am, are a bit confused. We heard the president last night say February 1st. There's an executive order that talks about studying the relationship between Canada and the U.S. as far as trade goes, with a deadline of April the 1st. What has been communicated to the federal cabinet as far as when Donald Trump plans to impose these tariffs? What can you tell us?
Pretty much what Canadians heard yesterday, Vashi. Look, as Canadians, with the U.S. as our largest trade partner, we've been preparing for this for months. These
doing a really poor job at it.
Unsurprising. So we're ready, whether they're imposed tomorrow, whether they're imposed a week, or hopefully not at all. But Canadians should make no mistake. We're ready to dig in for the next 4 years. Let's not think that any one move by one side will change things. A trip down to Mar-a-Lago. Canada's ready to fight for Canadians. We're talking about millions of jobs. So as the Prime Minister mentioned today, we need to be smart about this, and we need to make sure that the U.S. listens when we respond. We're not going to draw first blood. We're not going to pick the fight, but we'll be ready.
So can I...
Yeah, you're going to be ready. Yeah, all right. Definitely shows that you've been ready. Yeah, the past, 10 years you've been ready?
I draw from that we actually don't know for certain exactly when this may happen.
That's right, and that may be the intent, but people shouldn't presume from that, Vashi, that we aren't ready. This is something we've been perhaps over-prepared for, looking at a number of cascading scenarios. Obviously, it would be imprudent to speak publicly about that, because if and when we are to respond, we want to achieve maximum effect. But make no mistakes, Canadians should make no mistakes, that we're ready for anything and everything.
Do you believe that Canada can still escape the application of those tariffs?
We will do whatever we can, whether it's continuing the advocacy that we've been doing for some time, talking to the governors of the 35 states for which we're the largest trading partners, and the other 15 or so that have Canada as a big trading partner, that it is not in the U.S. or Americans' best interest to have this, what will be for American consumers, a Trump tax imposed on them by this attempt to penalize the closest ally and friend. Makes no sense, but I need to focus on Canadians, Vashi, and our national interests, and we're ready to fight for Canadians.
You call the past 10 years fighting for... man. What a goofball. What an absolute idiot.
My question, though, Minister, was whether or not you believe, based on the information you have, which I think Canadians would imagine would be, more specific or at a higher level than what the rest of us have access to, whether or not we can escape the application of those tariffs, or whether you do think it's a foregone conclusion that they're coming in some form at some point.
The assumption and the working assumption that we have to work with, Vashi, is that they are coming at some point. But again, we prefer that this not happen. There's an easy way and a hard way to do business with Canada. If the U.S. prepares for what it's been saying for some time, as Donald Trump has been saying, President Trump has been saying, to do this the hard way, we have to be ready to bring the pain to the U.S., and that's what we're prepared to do. The information that Canadians have been hearing over the last few days is the information that the government of Canada has. Again, we're looking at all the scenarios for our retort if and when we need to use it. And we're ready tomorrow. We're ready in 2 weeks. We'll be ready in 2 years if need be. But look, let's get ready for 4 years of this. There'll be a lot of ups and downs, but let's not.
My God, you're going to be gone, Mark. So it's really not going to matter. That's really the main issue about everything right now, is the Liberal Party is going to be a fraction of itself most likely after this election. And we're honestly just wasting time. That's all it is. We're watching a bunch of idiots scramble and try to pick up the last scrap or two of their party, holding on to power. It's just pathetic. The writing's on the wall. It's been on the wall. It's time all of you just step down. Do us all a favor. Call the election. Can get Parliament running again. Like, the whole fact that you have prorogued government is just delaying the inevitable, like I said earlier. We could already be in a better position with an election called. But Jagmeet didn't allow that. Now we have these idiots like Mark Miller saying that the next 4 years we're ready to dig our feet in and we're prepared. We've been over-prepared, actually. Really? Have you been over-prepared? Because your party is falling apart and you're not even all on the same page. Trying to run, like I said, picking up the final scraps of power to try and run for the leader of the Liberals. It's a fucking joke. What are you guys doing? Just leave. Just go. Take your half-assed pension and go.
Presume that you get one little victory, that it's all over and it'll be peace for the next 4 years. This is business as usual for the next 4 years, and Canadians, we all need to be prepared to dig in for that.
So let me ask you then what your view is on the motivation. And I ask that because of what you just said about this kind of being the new reality for the next 4 years. Is this about, as Donald Trump signaled in the Oval Office last night or in that initial social media post, border security? Is it about raising revenue, as he's also focused on during his inauguration speech? Or is it, as the Wall Street Journal is reporting, a negotiating tactic to start up CUSMA negotiations earlier than 2026?
Well, it could be one or it could be all of those, Vash. It could be something completely different. People have made it a science to try to divine what is going through the president's particular thought process and what he speaks to publicly and then what he does. That is a bit of art. It's a bit of science. Again, as our most important trading partner, we have to gauge for all scenarios, whether it's a process of renegotiation of CUSMA, which we did under the first Trump administration, whether it's the work that in international interest that we've been doing I've been doing over the last year as the Minister of Immigration, now David McGuinty and Minister Dominic LeBlanc was doing before on making sure the border is secured, which is in our national interest, or in raising revenue, which Mr. Trump will have to do if he punishes his own people and reduces their tax the tax revenue that he draws from Americans. We'll need to get money from somewhere. So all these theories are plausible. Again, we don't have the luxury of discarding them at the Canadian government. We have to be ready for all of them and all the motivations and how they impact our response. And that's what we've been looking at over the last 2 months as part of our Canada-U.S. Relations Committee, but also in this last retreat that the Prime Minister is part of, solely focused pretty much on our relationship with the U.S., which is what Canadians, I think, expect us to be doing.
As far as
Yeah, we expect you to be doing your job. It's a crazy thought process.
the border goes, and you were one of the kind of point ministers on that file when the initial announcement was made in December about strengthening the border between our two countries. The Tories today are calling on your government to put an end to the prorogation of Parliament because some of what you've announced does actually require parliamentary approval in essence. Why won't you bring back Parliament for that? And doesn't it make sense, if you need to put a border plan forward in order to escape these tariffs, if that's even part of it, that you do as much as you can right now?
Well, look at the Conservatives' track record over the last 6 months, Vashi. They've basically frozen Parliament. They had the opportunity to strengthen the asylum system last budget in June, and they decided to vote against it. So Canadians can believe that for what it's worth. There are a number of measures that we can bring into place that do not need Parliament to reconvene. Indeed.
He just said the Conservatives froze Parliament over the past 6 months while Trudeau literally prorogued Parliament. Is this guy on crack?
Were the Prime Minister or the President to impose tariffs, we would be ready to move tomorrow. We wouldn't have to reconvene Parliament. We're in a position where the Parliament's been prorogued because of the sclerosis that has occurred inside Parliament for the last 6 months, but also for the transition to a new Prime Minister, to a new leader of the Liberal Party. So for the sake of stability in our democracy, which is really important at this time where we may have to respond quite quickly, I think the prorogation makes sense. It's been done for a reasonable time until the last week of March. And that's something that will continue. I don't see that changing in any foreseeable future.
I guess putting the Tories aside for a second, though, if these tariffs, as the President said last night, are levied on February the 1st and Parliament is not sitting, I looked through your initial announcement in December. You lay out a couple of different cases where there are new legislative requirements. It's $1 billion of new money. I would imagine that would need to be voted on. Again, putting aside the Tories' criticism and just speaking to Canadians who would expect you to move forward as fast as possible on something that could exempt us from the application of these tariffs, does it actually make sense? Is it actually strengthening democracy not to have Parliament in session?
Well, there's an ability of the Government of Canada with a large balance sheet to cash manage these things. Actually, one of the considerations in proroguing was the fact that they have another financial year coming up on April 1st. So the period of prorogation is a reasonable time, the next 6 weeks, and any eventuality we can certainly cash manage for. But parliamentarians, as they should, as is demanded by our Constitution, will have the opportunity to vote on financial matters at the end of March, and they can vote for security. They can vote for...
It's time to let all of Canada vote and get your asses out of there. My God. All right, we have something a little interesting here. We have Poilievre talking with Punjabi media. I don't know why, but India is like way too involved in our like everything political here, our systems. It is just wild. You go and watch like Indian news and they're just speaking about Canada the whole time. It's kind of fucking concerning.
But in Canada, if you work hard, you get stuff. You get a house, you get good food, you get a safe neighborhood. That was the Canadian promise. But after 9 years of the NDP Liberal government, that promise is broken. Both carbon tax Chrystia Freeland and carbon tax Carney have been running our economy into the ground for the last 5 years. They have been Justin Trudeau's economic lieutenants. Carbon tax Carney is the official economic advisor to Justin Trudeau. Chrystia Freeland is his, until recently, finance minister. What have they done?
ਪੀਰ ਪੋਲੀਐਵ ਨੇ ਵੀਰਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਸਿਵਿਕ ਹੋਟਲ ਵਿਖੇ ਐਥਨਿਕ
Okay, well, I thought we were gonna get actual reporters speaking, or is it just gonna be a voiceover? Because if that's the case, I do not care.
To an open skies agreement that doesn't include a flight to Amritsar. What a total act of disrespect. How could you possibly say you're going to sign on to an open skies agreement with India that doesn't include a flight to Amritsar when we have the biggest expatriate Punjabi community in the world? Singapore has a direct flight to Amritsar. So does Malaysia, UK, Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan has one, not even Canada. Who else? Italy, UAE, they all have direct flights to Amritsar. Trudeau did not even get us a flight to Amritsar, even though our Punjabi population is way bigger than any of those other places.
ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਦਖਲਅੰਦਾਜ਼ੀ ਤੇ ਪੁੱਛੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ
That's a bit concerning. That is a little bit concerning.
We didn't have these problems before this NDP Liberal government. We didn't have foreign countries like China or India or Russia flagrantly interfering or assassinating Canadians on our soil before this Liberal government. Sikhs are being assassinated on Canadian soil. He can say he's speaking out against this. It's very easy to speak. But why is this happening? Why are murders of Sikhs happening on Canadian soil after?
Because well, not you specifically, Pierre, but because the fucking government has just allowed everybody from there to come in. I covered this months ago. Literal Indian civil war breaking out in the streets of Brampton. Guys riding on horses with like scimitars and swords larger than your fucking body. And they're just free to do whatever they please, fighting each other in front of their temples with massive flags that are actually doubling as spears. They're just free to do whatever the fuck they please. Maybe we should start, sending some of these people back home. Instead of, I don't know, opening a direct flight to there? The fuck is that? You want to sit here and go, well, why is all this happening? It's pretty damn obvious why it's happening. How many thousands of students that came here on, who knows if the visa is legit or not, and are now protesting to stay here? They're not even legal fucking citizens of Canada, and they're protesting to stay here. That's an issue. That is a big issue. You are here on a paid visa. This is a privilege to be here. And you're demanding that you stay? I don't fucking think so. That's not how that fucking works in any other country around the world. If you were to go there waving a flag around saying, I demand to stay here, guess what would happen? Yeah. You can go fucking put 2 and 2 together. It's a crock of bullshit if you ask me.
9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. Why won't Trudeau release the names? Why won't he release the names? If there are people who have betrayed Canada and knowingly worked to the advantage of a foreign government in any political party, I issue the challenge. Release the names. Make the names public. I'm not afraid. Release the names. I've told them, even if you claim there are conservatives on the list, release the names.
ਸਰਬਰਾਜ ਸਿੰਘ ਕਾਲੂ, Omni News, Surrey.
Alright, who cares about fucking Omni News? Moving on. Alberta Smith absolutely unloads on Trudeau. The blame for these tariffs lies with Trudeau. Let's take a listen.
Let's be super clear about why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in today. It lands 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau, who even just a few weeks ago gave a speech where he thought it was an affront to women that Kamala Harris didn't win. We're in a trade negotiation with a brand new administration, and we have a prime minister who keeps on poking his finger in the eye of the current administration and has damaged that relationship. So if there's a failure, it lands at his feet, which is why I'm counting down the days to when he's gone and we can have a reset. It's 47 days to go, and I hope he doesn't continue torching the relationship in the meantime. All I can do is try to repair and build relationships that should have been repaired and built over the last 4 years. That is what we do by having our office in Washington. We have good relationships with people on both sides of the aisle because that is what diplomacy is. You have to be able to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and you have to refrain from expressing a preference for who you would like in the White House. And so if there's a failure of leadership and if there's a damage to the relationship, it's 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau.
And there you have it. I mean, yeah, more or less he is the one to blame for a majority of the issues here. That's nobody's getting around that one. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. We have a lengthy podcast here with Czech media on with Pierre Poilievre. From what I've gathered, this guy goes in and asks some real questions, apparently, not some dumb, typical mainstream media, run-of-the-mill, bought and paid for questions, but we'll see. I've heard some things about this podcast. We'll see what happens here, though. Once again, thank you all for being here. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new. A lot of crazy stuff going on over these past 24 to 72 hours. Wild stuff. History, like literal history in the making right now.
We've got a lot of topics we want to hit. Short amount of time, so I'm just going to try and hit as many as we can in that time. Does that work for you, sir?
Fire away.
Okay, so here on Vancouver Island, we have a lot of issues that are similar to the rest of Canada. We also have some that are quite unique to Vancouver Island. So in your perspective, what would be the biggest issue facing people on Vancouver Island, in your eyes?
I think if I could pick two,
Sure.
I would say the skyrocketing cost of living and crime caused by the NDP Liberal governments. BC has taken it the worst. Housing costs in British Columbia are now among the highest in the entire world, which is really insane given how much land there is here. But the reality is that really obese bureaucracies and high taxes on home building have made Vancouver the most expensive housing market in North America. And of course, that radiates out to the island and the interior and the rest of British Columbia. And so I want to address that by, first of all, taking the GST off new homes to save buyers up to 50 grand. Secondly, to incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development charges. Third, by pushing the province to take its provincial sales tax off of new homes. These measures could save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for every newly built home and bring back the dream of home ownership, which has gotten out of reach after housing costs have literally more than doubled in the last decade of Trudeau and the NDP, and risen faster than any other country in the G7. So that's the first. And then, of course, the cost of food and other essentials has gone up because of the carbon tax. And we intend to axe the carbon tax. Now on to crime. I mean, the catch and release criminal justice system, the liberalization of drugs has hit BC particularly hard. We see rampant violent crime. The catch and release laws, C-75, C-83, and C5, all supported by the federal NDP, have turned the worst rampant repeat offenders loose on our streets. The radical NDP Liberal experiment with drugs is now becoming world famous for how horrible it has been. 47,000 Canadians have died, and of course BC has the worst in all of Canada. So we intend to end drug liberalization, ban the drugs, stop giving out tax-funded drugs, and we're going to invest in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free.
Okay, so I asked you for one. I think you gave me three, but that's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Lots going on
That's
right
a political
now.
answer. Yeah, there's no shortage of topics to hit. Okay, you talked about your Axe the Tax rally. That's been something that you've said a lot of, and it's certainly resonated with a lot of people.
Yes.
I am interested because the environment is a very big focus for a lot of people, especially here on Vancouver Island. So the former Secretary General of the UN says climate change is the single greatest threat to a sustainable future. We're seeing, of course, historic wildfires in California right now. Every summer, there's a wildfire season in BC. So how do you make sure Canada still hits the carbon emissions targets while axing that tax?
Well, first of all, I think we have to realize this is a global problem. So, but by raising taxes on our businesses, all we do is drive production to more polluting foreign jurisdictions. And so, for example, we have a tomato farm in my riding. They pay a carbon tax on the CO2 they release into their greenhouse, even though it's absorbed by the plant life. Well, what does that mean? A Mexican tomato is now more affordable in my community than a local Manotick tomato. So people are then incentivized to buy the tomato that had to be trucked and trained right across North America from Mexico because they don't have the Canadian carbon tax. I want to bring that production home, and that means axing the tax. I also want to displace dirty foreign energy with clean Canadian energy. For example, LNG. When we send LNG from, as we will soon be doing, from Kitimat to Asia, we displace dirtier forms of energy. According to the chief economist of National Bank, if we were able to supply India with half of its electrical demand from our natural gas, rather than having them go with coal, it would displace 2.5 billion tons of greenhouse gases, which is 3 times the total emissions of the entire Canadian economy. So I want to rapidly greenlight these LNG projects as one of the ways that we can displace dirtier forms of energy.
I mean, Canada is
So we have to now pay for other countries' issues? Is that what that sounds like? Is that what he's more or less getting at there? Because other countries can't pull their own fucking weight, we have to pay for it?
the 11th highest CO2 emitter in the world. And a lot of those plans you talk about are more long-term, which long-term that would make sense.
Why should they be so long-term?
But they are long-term because it takes a while to build these plans.
Well, it takes longer to get them approved,
Yes.
unfortunately, because we have the second slowest building permits in the OECD. The Germans went from concept to completion on an LNG import terminal in 194 days.
Right.
Like, this
So
is
it
how
is-
the
it is
real
doable.
world. The
Yeah.
problem is we don't live in the real world. We live in Canada right now, where you can't get anything done.
Is net zero by 2050 a goal that you want to continue to pursue?
Look, I think we have to live in the real world. The bottom line is that all of our infrastructure is built around traditional hydrocarbons, and if we think we're going to completely eliminate that in 15 or 20, 25 years, I think that is a pipe dream.
Okay, did we get, okay, I don't know what the hell that was.
Public safety in general.
Well, you got to lock up the criminals.
Wait, was that an intro? I'm so confused, man. Why don't they just have the actual podcast run from beginning to end?
The bottom line is we don't have a lot of criminals. We have a small number who are extremely productive, or I should say, destructive. And we know these people are going to reoffend because they have a track record of chronic career crime. So I will pass a 3 strikes law, which says that anyone convicted of 3 repeat offenses, 3 violent or serious offenses, will be ineligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest. And we'll take that very small number of criminals who do almost all the crime, and we will keep them in jail. Some of them will stay there forever. They will have life sentences. They will never come out alive. We will also secure our ports with high-powered scanners. We only inspect 1% of our shipping containers. That's where the drugs and guns are coming in. So we're going to have high-powered scanners that look into those containers and intercept the importation of illegal substances. And we'll pay for it by canceling this ridiculous gun grab. Licensed, law-abiding, trained, and tested hunters and sport shooters on Vancouver Island are not to blame for the violent gun crime. It's gangsters and gun smugglers. So I'm going to let the hunters and sport shooters keep their property and put the resources into going after the criminals.
And then as far as tent encampments are concerned, because there's a mental health aspect to it as well, and as I mentioned, toxic drug crisis part of it as well. How do you address that? Because a lot of people don't want to go to the housing that is being offered to them. So how do you actually address it?
Well, I think there's two parts to it. One is that the housing is unaffordable. So there are some people who are intense because they can't afford a home, and there are other people who are there because they have addictions
Right.
and other mental health problems. Let's start with housing costs. The reason we have such exorbitant housing costs is because we have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. And that's because we have the second slowest building permits and the highest taxes. Like in Vancouver, I know you're probably sick of hearing about Vancouver.
I lived there for a long time. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But I know how people always. But the point is, in Vancouver, 60% of the cost of a new home is government.
Right.
We're spending more on bureaucrats than we do on carpenters, electricians, plumbers who actually build the homes.
Right.
So we have to slash the governmental cost of housing so that we can build more. Take the GST off new homes, take the PST off new homes, cut the development charges, speed up the permits, free up the land, build the homes. On the mental health issue, the biggest mental health issue is addiction.
Right.
It's addiction to fentanyl. And frankly, all the government policies and all the public health agency approaches have made things worse. We now have, the drug dealer used to be a scary-looking guy on a street corner with a hoodie. Now it's a government bureaucrat who's handing out taxpayer-funded, unsafe supply, and that is contributing to the problem. So I will be cutting that off. I'll be shutting the drug dens, and I will put all the money.
I want to stop you there with the drug dens because I'm actually very fascinated with that.
Yeah,
Because since
please.
2016, you alluded to it, more than 14,000 people have died in BC from the toxic drug crisis. You have been very vocal about
Just in BC alone.
these safe consumption sites, calling them drug dens. For the past 20 years, Insight in Vancouver, you mentioned Vancouver, has seen more than 4.6 million visits with 0 overdose deaths on site. So would you see a benefit to working with people who are frontline staff, who are advocates, who deal with this every single day?
Well, it depends what you mean by advocates, because the advocates are pushing policies that have made everything worse. Like this approach of having government facilitate drug use has been really pioneered in British Columbia. It's been done more in BC than anywhere else in the world. And what are the results? The highest drug overdoses of any place in Canada, for sure.
But a lot of times those are people using alone, right? That's a big issue.
But why is it that in BC, where this policy has been most enthusiastically embraced by all 3 levels of government, we've had the worst results? Why is it that drug overdoses are worse here in BC than anywhere else in Canada? Do you have an idea of that?
I don't, but that's why I'd want to talk to a lot of frontline staff and people who see what's happening every day.
Here's the problem. These advocates now have an entire profit-making industry built around this. They have a financial interest in keeping this going. The drug companies that are giving the hydromorphine, the bureaucrats, the agencies, the advocates that get the money, the last thing they want is for the problem to go away, because then they wouldn't have a job. So we have built an entire industry and bureaucracy that depends for its livelihood around the continuation of this problem. And that is why BC is the worst place in Canada for drug overdoses. I'm not interested in funding advocates and bureaucrats and pharmaceutical companies that have gotten rich off other people's miseries. I want to put the resources into, you talk about frontline, I'll tell you who's going to be getting the money when I'm Prime Minister. Organizations that have a proven track record of getting people off drugs. In fact, I will have a pay for results contract for them, and I will be paying them based on the number of people they get off drugs.
Wow.
That's another thing you guys can add to the list of things Pierre has promised. God, man, he just keeps promising more and more and more, and his list is like, gotta be like 180 million pages now, right?
And it will be a results-driven approach, and they will be working to put themselves out of business by getting rid of the problem and giving people their lives back. And for anybody who's addicted, I want you to have the hope that you can turn things around. So many people have had their lives turned around through recovery and treatment, and that's what we're going to provide.
Right. Voluntary for the most part. And I don't want to speak for advocates, but I would assume that they would like to respond to that saying, we don't want to see anyone die from the toxic drug crisis. It is horrific. Let's shift gears and talk about incoming U.S. President Donald Trump. You took a very strong stance with him last week, saying Canada will never be the 51st state and that we can bypass the U.S. by building more energy infrastructure, as you sort of put it. Trump also said just a couple of days ago he doesn't care what you have to say. Your response to that?
Well, it's not about him or me. It's about putting Canada first. He's made it clear he wants to put America first. I'm making it clear I want to put Canada first. And that means that we have to develop our own infrastructure to export our energy and resources to the rest of the world without going through the U.S. We have to allow more interprovincial free trade in our own country so that we can actually trade across provincial boundaries. It's now easier to trade with the U.S. than it is to trade with each other. I will be cutting taxes on work, investment, home building, energy, and making stuff in Canada so that we can bring home those paychecks and production to Canada. And I would say to President Trump, I will retaliate with trade tariffs against American goods that are necessary to discourage America attacking our industries. I'd rather we work together, though.
Right.
Because if we do, we can have a bigger, stronger economy, and I will use the strength from that enhanced trade relationship to build our military, secure our borders, and help America, just like Canada, become safer, richer, and more secure.
I think it's a fascinating way to approach it. And you say it's not about you or Trump.
Mm-hmm.
If you are the prime minister, you do have to have that working relationship. So do you think that's a good tactic if he does make good on some of those tariffs that he's saying? That could really hurt Canadian industries, right?
Unfortunately, it will. And it will hurt Americans as well. And so I will be making the case to the Midwest refineries that take in our oil. We send $100 billion of Canadian oil.
For cheap.
For $15 below market price. We're giving that energy to the Americans, and then they're reselling it at a huge profit. Frankly, if he cuts off his refineries and LNG plants from our resources, then there are going to be a lot of unionized American workers who are going to be out of a job, and many of them voted for President Trump. So I'm going to say to him, look, you're better off, and your workers are going to be way better off by deepening our trade relationship, not attacking your best friend in the world.
You know, politics is divisive in nature, no doubt. But over the last few years, it's kind of gotten downright nasty. It's happened in BC politics as well, federal politics. It certainly is south of the border. Who does that benefit?
Well, what do you mean by nasty?
Well, it's gotten nasty, right?
How so?
Like, I mean, you got kicked out of the House of Commons for calling the Prime Minister a wacko. A minister on the federal Liberals told you to grow a pair. Like, I think that's pretty nasty, is it not?
Well, I don't.
Are we nasty? Really? Oh, come on. They could do a lot worse than that. I'm sure there's a lot worse things that could be said than you're a wacko, Prime Minister. My God, that is like, I'm Canadian and that's the most fucking Canadian thing I've ever heard. Canadians are getting a little nasty. They're saying grow a pair and wacko. You make us sound so incredibly soft. What the fuck is that?
I think it's actually what I said about Mr. Trudeau is true, and I think most people would agree it's true. And I think it's better to be blunt. I think we need a moratorium in politics on polite conversations, actually, because things are going really badly in this country.
Right.
And they're going really badly because I think politicians are giving themselves a nice pat on the back for screwing things up. At the end of the day, I think it's time our politicians were held accountable. And yes, that's going to mean sometimes tough language.
You'll embrace it. So even if you're prime minister, you want...
If you want change, you cut all of their wages by 50%. They only make half of what they make right now. And if they don't do their fucking job, they get fired. And they get replaced. And it's not a matter of... oh, we'll wait for so-and-so to get a pension, and then they may or may not resign and then go into the backbench, and they still get to vote on certain... like, no, you're gone. You're fucking gone. You lose half of your salary, just baseline, because you're working for the people. You don't deserve over $100,000+ annually. Get a fucking hold of yourself. So you lose 50% of that, no matter who you are. You serve the people, and if you do your job wrong, you're fired. You're gone.
That nastiness coming towards you.
I don't call it nastiness.
Okay.
I call it truth-telling. If I have to choose between polite and truth, I pick the truth.
Okay. You know, I'm running out of time here. And
I'm done being polite with a bunch of people who sit there and just play the entire country.
I know your time is limited, and I thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Word you said there was truth. It's been 9 years since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report had 94 calls to action. Canada's completed 13 of them so far. So is it important for the Prime Minister to work directly with Indigenous peoples in this country to realize more of those calls?
Well, there's two parts to your question. One is to realize more of those calls. The other is to work directly with First Nations. Obviously, we have to work directly. And that is what I propose to do by empowering First Nations communities to enrich themselves and break the dominance of the federal bureaucracy over their lives. I've said I would give, I would vacate federal tax room for companies so they could pay those revenues directly to First Nations communities when they develop resources on First Nations land. That would create own source revenues for First Nations communities to provide clean drinking water, education, and other services while generating paychecks for their workers. I mean, the problem is that the bureaucracy in Ottawa dictates everything, consumes the money, takes the money, and then makes these communities come and fill out endless paperwork to ask for it back. That doesn't work. We need to give more autonomy to the First Nations communities, allow them to raise their own money, and allow their people to have prosperity and jobs. That's the bright future that I offer First Nations.
I think that's very fair. But according to Stats Canada, 490 Indigenous women and girls were victims of homicide from 2009 to 2021, a murder rate 6 times the non-Indigenous comparison. So when it comes to issues that would need federal support, would you be there?
Yes. Well, in that case, we need to lock up the criminals that killed them. You know, like, who's killing these women?
That's what we need to find out.
Well, let's put them in jail.
Right.
And let's not let them out of jail. You know, if they're going on murder rampages and
Isn't that a crazy idea?
these communities, the murderer who commits the crime should be in jail.
Final couple of questions here. You've got such a very strong base. The Conservative movement is very real right across the country, including here on Vancouver Island.
I don't think it's necessarily the Conservative movement. It's just the we're fucking tired movement. Because I'm sure there's a lot of conservatives, yes, but there's also a lot of people that can simply just go to the grocery store and say, I'm done with this. You go to the gas pump. Oh, look at that. Gas is almost $2 again. You know what I mean? You don't have to be, well, maybe if you're a liberal, but you don't have to be a conservative to sit there and go, what has happened?
Island. You've got that vote, but you've also have some people who may not agree with your policies and where you're going, including here on Vancouver Island. So how do you convince those people that you can be their prime minister and represent them as well?
Well, what I'm trying to do is bring back the common sense consensus that made our country such a wonderful place. Right. You know, it used to be that liberals believed in liberty, conservatives believed in conserving it, and together we built the best nation on earth. We had something called the Canadian promise, where anyone from anywhere could do anything. Hard work would get you a powerful paycheck and pension that would buy affordable food and homes and safe neighborhoods. And people controlled their own destinies. That has been lost because of a really radical woke departure by the NDP Liberals, that it is really quite foreign to the Canadian way of doing things. I just want to get back to the common sense consensus that allowed us to have the best country in the world.
In a National Post interview 2 years ago, you said, if you become prime minister, you would want the House of Commons to look like Canada. So what does Canada look like to Pierre Poilievre?
To me, it means having more of the common people. I'm talking about not just not just lawyers and bureaucrats and CEOs, but also plumbers and electricians and carpenters. It means having people of all ages and from all walks of life, particularly people who perhaps didn't start off with much, but were able to build a great successful life through their own hard work. That's the kind of people. That's why it's called the House of Commons.
Right.
It's supposed to be the common people. It's why it's green. It's supposed to be the people who
House
work in
of
the
Common
field.
Sense is right there. I don't know why you haven't taken that yet. Or maybe you have.
I haven't had enough coffee after the jet lag from Ottawa.
Well, there you go. There you have it. All right, the final thing we are going to get into, I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, a mega thread of all of Trump's day one executive orders. That's quite a few. Quite a few. So we're going to take a look here. First off, Trump declares national emergency at the border.
Sir, this is an executive order entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, which again deals with the southern border and the unprecedented admission of illegal aliens across the southern border.
What do you see the biggest national security threat to the U.S., Mr. President? What's going to be your priority on foreign policy?
Say?
What's going to be your priority on foreign policy? What do you see as the biggest
Well,
national
foreign
security
policy is a big statement. I mean, my priority on foreign policy is going to be to keep America safe. Very simple. It's a big question, though. That's a very big question.
Who is going to be the first foreign leader that you plan to meet, or who are you going to call tomorrow on your first day?
I've already been meeting people. I've been meeting them. I've been talking to them. I met with Prime Minister.
Yeah, I said this earlier in the stream. He should be pointing fingers at the group of individuals that were in office for the 4 years before this. That administration absolutely destroyed their country and has allowed everything that he is going against to happen. That Trump is going against, they have allowed to happen. So instead of working with us, he's going to slap tariffs on us. Instead of getting pissed off at the idiots and trying to fucking, get those individuals in check, he's coming after us. You have an entire administration that just obliterated your country for 4 years straight. And you're going after Canada like it was us. All right, I covered that thing earlier. I'll pull it up again. It was like $83 million worth of cocaine that they found here in Canada that came up from Mexico through the US into Canada. $83 million, 875 kilos. The Mexican cartel were the distributors. 6 people arrested. And you're sitting here fucking blaming Canada. Why don't you blame the administration that came before? Joe Biden and his band of retards that did absolutely nothing but allow this shit to pour in for 4 years straight. And you're gonna sit here pointing fingers at us. Turn the mirror around. Look who's sitting around you. Look at the fucking idiots around you. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all of their executives and co-leaders, whoever the fuck. All of those people that were in that cabinet, within that office. And you're sitting here blaming Canada. Get your fucking shit together. Don't get me wrong. I like Trump. But my God, we're not the ones to be blamed for this. It's the people that came before you. It's Joe Biden. Kamala Harris. By the way, if Kamala Harris got into office, shit like this would have continued for another 4 years. She was border czar, and the border patrol and the agents of the border were begging her to show up just once so they could talk to her, and she never did until it was convenient for her running an election. So once again, you're going to sit here blaming us for an administration that did not give a fuck about Americans. Don't blame Canada for your own bullshit. Deal with your own people. Moving on. Trump ends catch and release. Trump signed an executive order officially ending the federal catch and release program. Policy had allowed migrants who entered illegally to stay in the U.S. while awaiting asylum. Basically, you're going home. You're getting caught and you're going back home. Trump reinstates remain in Mexico policy. This requires asylum seekers to remain in Mexico while their claims are processed, reducing strain on U.S. immigration facilities. I don't know what this video is. I don't know if I can show it. I have to be careful. It just looks like people, or not people, but a SWAT team, riot team, blocking off the border, potentially, El Paso. Trump resumes border wall construction, first initiated during his previous term. I figured that much. Trump designates cartels as global terrorists.
This is actually an executive order designating the cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
That's a big one.
Yes, sir.
People have wanted to do this for years. So they are now designated as terrorist organizations, foreign. And Mexico probably doesn't want that.
Oh, shit. That's a big move. It's a big move. I don't think anything's going to be done about it, but that is a big move. Trump suspends refugee resettlement for 4 months. The pause is part of his broader strategy to address what he calls the migrant invasion of America. We have a lot of people coming in from the southern border.
Here at home, I will ban refugee resettlement from terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip. We will restore the travel ban, some people call it the Trump travel ban, and keep the radical Islamic terrorists out of our country. That was upheld by the Supreme Court, and it really did work. Again, we had no terrorist attacks into the United States. Think of it. Now I'm talking United States, if that's okay. We had no terrorist attacks for 4 years. Nothing. Nothing. They knew, don't play games with us. And we will deport the foreign jihad sympathizers and Hamas supporters from our midst. We will get them out.
I just noticed on the side here, for some reason, World War III is trending in Canada.
If you hate America, if you want to eliminate Israel, we will throw you out of our country so rapidly your head will spin.
It will spin, and it will fall right off. Trump changes birthright citizenship rules. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to those born in the U.S., but Trump's order challenges that interpretation.
Next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
That's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the court? That one is likely to be challenged.
Could be. We think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, we'll see. We think we have very good grounds. People have wanted to do this for decades.
Next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship.
That's a fucking big one, man. Holy shit. That's a big one. Troops deployed to the border. Trump authorized the deployment of military forces to the southern border through an executive order. So there you go. Trump orders enhanced border vetting. The measures aim to close loopholes and strengthen processes to identify and block security threats. A good one as well. Trump ends government censorship. Holy, that's a big one. That's a big one. The order directs agencies to cease any actions that suppress free speech, framing it as a restoration of the First Amendment rights.
This next item is a directive to the federal government ordering the restoration of freedom of speech and preventing government censorship of free speech going forward.
This is fucking wild. After he got sworn in, like hours later, he goes to this like literally, I don't know if it's going to show the entire stadium, but it's fucking filled to the brim, like thousands of people. And he's sitting there fucking signing these executive orders with a crowd of like 20,000, 30,000 people. It's like the most fucking ridiculous, over-the-top shit ever. And he's sitting there like talking to everybody as he's signing. Look at this fucking... Oh my god, man. Moving on, federal hiring and regulation freeze. He specifically targeted the IRS for a hiring freeze and ordered federal workers to return to their offices. I believe that, yeah, like all the government agents that were essentially just chilling at home collecting a paycheck, I'm pretty sure they're all being ordered back to their offices. They gotta go. You gotta work in the office. Trump targets weaponization of government. Pretty much the thing that happened to him during his entire run for president. This move aims to restore fairness and prevention partisan misuse of federal power.
Lastly, sir, before we go back to the Oval Office to sign a large number of other items, is a directive to the federal government ending the weaponization of government against the political adversaries of the previous administration, as we've seen.
There you have that one. I have no idea how big this threat is, but we are in for the long haul. We got some Biden orders here. The rollback targets policies that Trump says undermined American prosperity and national security.
Sure. The first item that President Trump is signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
That's another big one as well. Security clearances revoked. Trump revoked security clearances for former officials who signed a letter claiming Hunter Biden's laptop was false. Holy shit. Holy. You know what, man? I said this months ago. He didn't fuck around in 2016, and he's not fucking around now. He is quadrupling down. And he's a man of his word. I remember there were people on a couple of my videos saying, oh yeah, Trump a man of his word. And they were fucking talking all this shit. And look what he's doing. And it's literally 2 days, day 2 of him taking office, man. Like, it's just begun. This is literally the beginning. And if the rumors are true, February 1st, we're gonna get hit with 25% tariffs. So... he's not fucking around, man. I don't know how many times I had to say that, and people just, they didn't believe me. They didn't believe me when I said that shit. Yes, the security clearance is revoked. Death penalty restored. Whew. Holy shit. The order directs the Attorney General to ensure states have access to necessary lethal injection drugs. Reforming policy-making federal positions. Trump reclassified federal roles with policy-making authority to enhance accountability. Wow, there we go. Sounds like some possible Doge stuff. But yeah, there's another one. Trump addresses cost of living crisis. Wow, you can address that here as well.
Next, we have a directive to every department and agency in the federal government to address the cost of living crisis that has cost Americans so dearly.
There you go. America First foreign policy implemented. Trump signed an executive order to implement an America First foreign policy. The order mandates all operations, policies, and programs to prioritize U.S. interests. We need this in Canada as well. Holy fucking shit, man. There's so many things here that I'm looking at that I'm like, we need this. We really do. our country would be much better off with something like this. U.S. foreign aid suspended for 90 days. That's something we need as well. Trump paused all U.S. foreign assistance programs for 90 days. This probably allows them to reevaluate some of their programs or whatever the hell they've got going on there. Trump rejects a global tax deal. The order safeguards American companies from an extraterritorial taxation and discriminatory practices. I almost fucked that word up. I was looking at it. I was about to say like extraterrestrial. Oh. Anyway, moving on. Trump declares national energy emergency. Drill, baby, drill. This is what we knew for literally all of last year. If you watched one of his rallies, speeches, whatever you want to call them, that's one of the things he talked about. We're going to bring fracking back. Where was it specifically? I can't think of the state, but he ran heavily for fracking in the Steelers. I can think of the football game, Pittsburgh. That's where it was. He was like, we're bringing back the fracking. I can't do the Trump voice. I'm losing it. Trump withdraws from Paris Climate Agreement.
Thank you, sir. The next item here is the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, we're a big supplier of oil, that's for sure. 100%. So I guess we'll see what happens once if February 1st hits and there's those tariffs are there, it's going to be interesting because even Doug Ford was saying like we're going to pull out all of our energy out of Ontario and like I just why can't we work together, man? What are we doing here? Trump opens Alaska's oil reserves. Trump signed an order unlocking the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. Refuge in Alaska for oil drilling. Interesting stuff. Trump halts offshore wind expansion. Yes, the stupid windmills that I still have no idea how they work. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing with those things? I don't know. Doge. There it is. Doge. The Doge account goes official. The department goes official. Spearheaded by elongated Musk. That's interesting stuff right there. Trump delays the TikTok ban. I really don't fucking care about TikTok. And all of those degenerate weirdos can go work at McDonald's.
He's good. He's doing a good job. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know what's going to happen with that. He's got some very strong ideas in the market.
You signed Did you sign the TikTok order?
Yeah.
Yes, that was just. Yes, I did. I love China. I'm just kidding. Anyway, Flags had full staff on Inauguration Day. He signed that executive order. Trump appoints officials in signing ceremony. Trump handed ceremonial pens to Vice President Vance and the congressional leaders during the event. He appointed the 22 cabinet and non-cabinet officials, 47 sub-cabinet leaders, and 31 acting designates. Full pardons for J6. Thank God. Like, what a stupid thing to throw people in prison for.
Mutations in there where we're doing further research. Nice to see you again. So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight, frankly. They're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people. Six commutations.
Were there any cases you did not commute or pardon of people?
We're looking at different things. but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look and.
All right, hell yeah. Trump limits definitions of gender identity. Trump signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to define individuals by sex and not gender in policies and documents. We just saw earlier at the beginning of the stream, Pierre Poilievre was like, how many genders are there? That reporter, I want to pull that up again, man. If you guys missed that, that was fucking great.
A great successful.
Nope, not that one. Hold on, bear with me here. Oh, did I lose it? I might have lost it. Let's see. I might have to go back in my history, double check. Where is it? Tell me I lost it. That would be so disappointing. Oh, wait, is this it? Oh, I found it. Okay,
we're joined live by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Thanks for joining us here live on CP24. I got to ask you, where were you when the inauguration? Yeah.
She's been Justin Trudeau's to the complex minute and back Liberals for leader. We're going to hire said.
Back to D.C. right now. Obviously, on his first day on the job, President Trump signed an executive order. The U.S. government only recognizing two genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me.
The reporter is like, I don't.
Personally,
yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man. I am as people who say cis man. There are people there who they say they're gender neutral. Well, you are a man. Yes, there are people out there who say they're gender neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here, whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only two?
I'm only aware of two, but I mean.
I'm only aware of two. Yeah, that's biology for you. Moving on. Oh, I think that's it. Alrighty. That is all 30 of the executive orders that Trump signed on his, I believe, first day in office. I'm pretty sure he did that all on the 20th. Yep, first day. Day one. Mega thread. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is gonna bring us to the end of the stream today. Thank you all for being here. You're all legends. You're all fantastic. You could be anywhere else in the world, but you're spending your time with me. Thank you very much. But yes, that is gonna close today's show or stream or whatever you want to call it. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button if you haven't yet. Turn that notification bell on. I've been uploading some shorts. I don't know, the long form videos, they don't seem to do as well. But the shorts, for some reason, they're going off the rails. So I'm going to continue doing that. Right now, I'm looking at least 1 or 2 streams a week. And then hopefully Parliament continues, and then we'll be back on question period every day. The schedule still remains. The 24th will be the big return day, if that is what is going to happen. Trudeau could turn into Castro Jr., and some things could change, but I don't know. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here. I will see you whenever the next stream is. Have a great rest of your day or night. Take it easy.